This is the video for lesson 5, and we are talking about standard form of a linear equation. We talked about what the y-intercept was, so now let's talk about the x-intercept. What exactly is the x-intercept? The x-intercept is where the graph crosses over the x-axis. In other words, it is the value of x when y equals 0. Standard form of a linear equation, you do need to memorize this. Standard form of a linear equation is ax plus by equals c. So I said there's a lot you need to memorize in this chapter, and you need to be keeping flashcards with all the different information you have to memorize. So you need to create a new flashcard and you need to add this to it. Standard form of a linear equation. You have to memorize this. The rule is a cannot be negative and a cannot be a fraction. So you do need to memorize that as well. So now let's talk about how to find x and y intercepts. So remember what I said. I said the x-intercept is the value of x when y is 0, and the y-intercept is going to be the value of y when x is 0. So what do I do to find the x and the y-intercepts? Well, to find the x-intercept, I set y equal to 0. So my x-intercept is 8, because when y is 0, x is 8. Now I need to find the y-intercept. So I said the y-intercept is the value of y when x is 0. So when x is 0, y is 6. So this is going to be my x-intercept, and this is my y-intercept. So now go ahead and hit pause and find the x and y-intercepts for both of these problems. So here are the answers. The y-intercept here is at -10. When x is 0, y is -10. And the x-intercept is going to be at 12. When y is 0, x is 12. Here my x-intercept is going to be at 4, and my y-intercept is going to be at 1.5. Okay, so now how do we graph a line using intercepts? We're going to go through the same process, we're just going to graph it. We want to find the value of x when y is 0, and we want to find the value of y when x is 0. So, when y is 0, x is going to be -2. So that is going to be my x-intercept. And when x is 0, y is going to be 1. So this is going to be my y-intercept. So now I'm just going to graph it. So this line is going to cross over at -2, 0. And at 0, 1. So there's my line. Okay, so go ahead and hit pause and work out this on your own problem. Okay, so here's your answer. The x-intercept is going to be at 10. This line is going to cross the x-axis at 10. And the y-intercept is going to be at 4. This line is going to cross the y-axis at 4. Because, and how did I get that? You can pause the video and look at my math. Because when y is 0, I plug 0 in for y. When y is 0, x is 10. And here, when x is 0, I plug 0 in for x. When x is 0, y is 4. Okay, now we're going to review graphing vertical and horizontal lines, and we already talked about this when we talked about slope, and I know you talked about this last year as well, but we're just going to review this really fast. So if I say x equals 3, that is just going to be a vertical line that goes straight through the x-axis at 3. In other words, what this is saying is, for all values of y, x is going to be 3. It's an undefined slope. And so then for the next one, y equals 3, that's going to be a horizontal line through the y-axis at 3. It's going to have a slope of 0. And what is this saying? This is saying for all values of x, y is going to equal 3. So again, we did talk about that. This is just a quick review on how to graph vertical and horizontal lines. Okay, and finally, transforming to standard form. Remember, I said all these different forms, standard form, slope-intercept form, point-slope form, and even the formula in order to get the slope itself. These are all things you need to memorize, and they are all different versions of the same line. That's extremely important that you understand that. So what we're going to do, and I know I did this a little bit in the last video, but we're just going to practice going from one form to the next. So this is slope-intercept form, and it says go ahead and move that to standard form. So you can see why you need to memorize all of these. Okay, so what am I going to do? What's the first thing I need to do? I have a denominator here of 7, and I want to get rid of the denominator, so I'm going to multiply every term by 7. And in doing so, I will get rid of my denominator. Now what do I need to do? Look at standard form. You have the terms that have the variable on the left-hand side, and you have your constant by itself on the right. So that's what I need to do here. So I need to bring over this term that has the x. So what am I going to do? I'm going to add 3x to both sides. And then I'm going to put it in ABC order. And this is standard form. Now, what do you notice about the slope? Look back at the original equation here. What is your slope? Your slope is negative 3 over 7. Your slope here is the same because when an equation is in standard form, your slope is always negative a over b. Pause the video and make sure that you see and understand that. When a line is in standard form, appropriate standard form, and remember, appropriate standard form is a cannot be negative and it can't be a fraction. So when your line is in appropriate standard form, your slope is always going to be negative a over b. Okay, so now pause the video. Now we have an equation in point-slope form, and from point-slope form you can move it to standard form or you can move it to slope-intercept form. But here it's asking you to move it to standard form. So take this equation and translate it into standard form. Okay, so what's the first thing I need to do? I have a denominator. I want to get rid of the denominator, so I'm going to multiply every term by 3. And when I do so, I'll get rid of my denominator. Now I'm going to go ahead and distribute this negative 1 Now what do I need to do? Write down what standard form is so you can look at it. This is what standard form is. I want to get all the terms that have the variable on one side, and I want to get the constant by itself on the other. So let me go ahead and move my constant over. And if it doesn't, just so you don't get confused, you can say plus 0 if that helps you, but you don't have to. Okay, so now what am I going to do? I'm going to go ahead and bring this variable over because I want all the variables, all the terms with the variables on the left-hand side when it's in standard form. So I'm going to add x to both sides. What I'm doing is adding x to both sides. I want to make sure that you understand that. That's what I'm doing. Because these cancel out, and I'm left with 0 on the right-hand side. Okay, so you can go ahead and stop the video and do your homework, and if you have any questions, let me know.